Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready.
Okay, welcome back to a little bit more of Live from the Heartland for January 7th. This is number 134 during the since the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm really glad to be bringing on somebody who I've always loved her name. When I first saw the name Corinna, it reminded me of Corinna, that song which I used to sing when I was playing the guitar. And I got to meet Corrina Fales. She was a community organizer working with the Newark Community Union Project back in 1965. I was involved with Students for Democratic Society, as was she, I believe. And SDS had these economic research and action projects where they encouraged students to go into poor and working neighborhoods and organize for change. And I worked in Joint Community Union. Corinna worked at the Newark Community Union Project. And I don't know if I met her in Newark or if I met her at the Poor People's Conference in '65 or if we met at an SDS reunion, but we're both on an SDS list where people do a lot of emailing back and forth. And I put it out there that, okay, you old comrades, I'm looking for more guests. And she responded. She sent me her books. This one, Different, was about growing up at Lincoln University. So I'm going to ask her to share a little bit about NCUP, the Newark Community Union Project, and then we'll move on to not only one, but two of her books. Good morning to you.
Oh, wow. Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon. It's afternoon. It's good to see you after all these years.
Likewise. What a treat. Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us about, I like to think that there's young organizers who are learning about what we did. You know, we looked to Alinsky and the labor movement for our community organizing efforts back in the day. Tell us a little bit about your time at Newark and what that was at NCUP.
Okay, and I still have friends, by the way, there. So it was a very long-term relationship with some of those folks because they've been friends for 60 years now. We're still in touch, the ones that are alive. And we, what shall I say? I was organizing around a single issue, which was, I was assigned a couple of blocks of an area, and the common issue for everybody there was the truck traffic and the lack of a stop light. And so their kids were getting hurt and killed. It was a mess. And there was a lot of energy behind trying to get a stoplight. And a lot of people, if you, I don't know, Mike, if you've seen the movie Troublemakers, there's a scene where, okay, that's my block. Those people were people that I organized, actually, even though I'm not, you don't see me in the film. I mean, at that point, it went differently, and the project wanted somebody to come in who was Black and sort of a speaker with a megaphone, which is not my style. And so, you see the people on the street with all that going on, but actually I was the one that put it all together. And it did eventually, I mean, the city of Newark stonewalled us. It did eventually fall apart. Whereas in one of the white sections, people just simply signed a petition and got a stoplight. So you could see all the difference in the world. But if as an organizer, and this might sound, I'm not floofy or airy-fairy, but honestly, if I had to say one thing as an organizer, because I'm not a strategist, and I actually don't know that I want to try to be a strategist. It's just not, it's not me. As an organizer, you have to love people. That honestly, it makes all the difference. And I did, and and I was a very successful organizer, I have to say. I'm not, the speaker at the top. Well, I'm speaking now, but I wasn't in those days, especially in the male-dominated SDS, which you know about. I wasn't that much of a strategist, but in terms of organizing and getting people together without the love, good luck.
Well, you had guys like Tom Hayden there for a while, and I don't ever know what happened to Barry Kalish and Betty. They came to Oakland and worked with us in the Oakland Community Project. Betty
who?
I don't remember. It was an African-American woman who was running with Barry Kalish.
Well, guess what? Can I say something?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
I spoke to Betty yesterday.
Wow.
My next book is planned to be about Betty, who has fostered 14 children extremely successfully. And I want to call it Betty's Gift because I want to know, what did she do when she got those kids out of really terrible circumstances? And every one of them is in terrific shape. And you can love your kids. A lot of, people do, but that doesn't mean they can successfully do that. So actually, Betty and I are in touch all the time. I just got an updated photo of her. That's what I mean. These are long-term relationships.
Well, if you got an address or find anything about Barry, I'd love to talk to him again.
Okay, well, we discussed Barry. I can talk to you separately about that, but Betty and I said something yesterday.
After we connected again, you sent me a couple of books, and I learned a lot of things about you. I had no idea about any of this. You went on to live after Newark. I think you went and lived in Harlem for about 25 years. Now you're in North Carolina. You're working on. You're an author, a writer, editor, a speaker, you facilitate discussions about race and community, but you also grew up in Lincoln at Lincoln University, which is an African-American school. It's the first historically Black college, I guess, that gave degrees. Cheney State was a little before, but I had never heard of Lincoln University and knew nothing about it until I was reading Oliver Cox, my monthly review copy of a book that was originally a double-day 1946 Caste, Class, and Race by Oliver Cox. And he was at Lincoln University. So how about you talk a little bit about Lincoln University, because it's a great story. And then you did a book, which is basically a collective memoir of people who grew up there or lived there. Take it away, Corinna.
Well, I've had a lot of gifts in my life and a lot of hard times, but one of my gifts was growing up in Lincoln University, and especially when I did, which is when the first Black president was in office. Julian Bond, some of you may know his name, his dad was the president at the time that I grew up there on the campus. And my dad taught there. My parents are Jewish refugees from Hitler. Their families were murdered. And they raised me, he was a professor of philosophy, my father, and raised me, at that time, faculty was all on the campus. So I used to go to sleep to hearing the Glee Club sing at night and beautiful songs, and Einstein came to speak, and Thurgood Marshall went there, and Marian Anderson came to sing. And I mean, it was just extraordinary place. It had most stops on the Underground Railroad, I think, of anywhere. They're right on campus. People knew where some of the places were. And it was just, and we had the largest African contingent anywhere in the country. So it was just a tremendously vibrant and dynamic place to grow up. And really pretty much, there were a couple of other white families and kids, but really all my close friends were Black. And so that was just an experience in itself. For example, when Emmett Till was murdered, and his photographs were in Jet magazine, I was with an all-Black group of friends looking at those pictures. So it goes way back for me and very deep. And also, I just want to say this, because I wouldn't have written that book without the next experience, which is that my dad died when I was 8. And then we really went into poverty, and we moved to the adjoining community, which was literally and figuratively across the railroad tracks. And, ate chicken foot soup and stuff like that. And it was very hard on me, but I'm super grateful for that part, because I got to live literally on both sides of the tracks and live in a whole other very poor rural community that was very uneducated, formally speaking, and had a whole other set of experiences. And without that, I wouldn't be me. So when I went to Newark, I was home. I was just totally home. Everyone was like, how does she do it? And I thought, well, y'all didn't grow up the way I did. So, yeah.
No, I knew none of that. And it's pretty impressive. And the stories, I read chunks of this book, and I read Yvonne Foster and her friend, Susie Grubb. And Susie, I guess, from a white family, she either did a debutante thing or something and didn't tell her other Yvonne. And there was growing apart and people coming together. Tell us a little stories about this book. I mean, you you've got interviews with a lot of people, and including Julian Bond, who some of the younger folks, some people may not know. Tell us a little bit about growing up with Julian Bond.
Well, he was fun. He was a little, he used to scare us on Halloween and stuff. I mean, I know him personally, not as a, historic figure, or also as a historic. He was actually waiting for the book to come out, and he kept saying, "Corinna, where is the book?" And I said, I tell you what, I'll give you an advance copy if you give me like a testimonial. And he said, sure. And literally, he dropped dead 2 days later. So that was crazy timing. But I mean, Julian is part of, what draws people who know his name to the book. But in fact, I was looking at the entire community and the entire social community. And the interviews include the son of the county boss, who was white, and whose dad was well known to be in the KKK, or I should say reputed, but locally, yes. And his white son was the only white child in the otherwise all Black school. So how did that happen? So there are just a lot of stories of, and then there's Yvonne and Susie looking at the same issues, from different perspectives. I learned a lot because I thought I knew a lot. And I found out 50 years later when I went back and interviewed them that there was so much I didn't know. And the white kids were raised to be colorblind, and the Black kids were like, and that was one of the big things. So I just learned a tremendous amount. And I think the model, I'm just proud of it because not from me, but because it's an honest book. Everybody in their interviews is honest. There's no political correctness. There's no this, there's no that. There's straight up real talk. And to me, it's a model of how we need to be speaking now that we aren't speaking. So I cherish everybody for giving me their real selves, and being open.
Well, you've been talking about starting to do more speaking on diversity, and I had some notes here. I say there's a lot in our country, there's a lot of talk about diversity these days, equity and inclusion, but in a lot of ways clearly we haven't practiced it. And how do we develop real and open conversations about diversity and bring about some real change? You got a plan for that?
Yes, I do.
That's what I want to hear.
And I'm only going to reveal part of it because I'm literally writing talks for what I hope are paid speaking gigs, because I may be old, but I have to keep working. I can't retire. So I'm not going to give it all away. I'm not going to give it all away, but I'm not where you think I might stand coming from sort of my background. I think political correctness has been maybe well-intentioned. I'm not sure it ever was, but big mistake. One of the issues is this, and I won't give you the whole 9 yards, but science is clear that the reason we have an aversion to diversity, to difference, it's in our DNA. And until we deal with that piece, for starters, we're not going to come up with good solutions. Because people I don't know why that's not it's not the common narrative, but it's been clear for quite a while from studying babies as little as 3 months old. And it's in my talk. And so the question is, start with the truth. If you don't start with the truth, as a student of social policy, I was taught, but it's common sense. If you don't analyze something correctly, you're not going to come with a way to deal with it. And PC this problem starts in our brain. It's like in our brain stems. It's the primitive part of our brain, and it's in us the same way it's in animals, to be wary of difference, to be careful, it's for our survival as a species. And so there is no help to call it bad, does not help. The question is, you say, okay, we have this thing in us. How do we deal with it? And I will go so far as to say one of the problems is that what political correctness has done, and I don't mean by that, I'm for addressing everybody the way they want to be addressed. So that's not when I'm speaking of what it's become, which I think you know what I mean. But it is a purely mental construct designed to solve a problem that's in the mind to begin with. And it's like fighting fire with fire. It will get nowhere except it breeds resentment. You're already seeing the backlash. I get it, frankly. And so the question is, what will work and what can work instead. And I'm writing a speech now where I make 3 points saying, here's what anybody can do. Anybody who wants to make this choice can make this choice and make a difference. But it's not what's being done in leftist, progressive, PC circles at all. So I find it really sad and very disturbing and very divisive. And I really get why people resent it.
Well, I understand how different animals, different species can be wary of each other. I also like to watch those things on not Facebook, but the reels where you got a pig and a duck, little, playing together. They don't fight, So that's optimism for me. But I've always said we have as a human being, the human species has the ability to reason, to think, to create, to love, to be free. So how do we go beyond the internal or the DNA makeup that keeps us from trusting, being open to others, so that we can have a way that the different groups of people, et cetera, can get along on the planet?
I'm not giving you my secret yet.
Okay.
because I'm trying to hold this, but
you do think it's possible, and you're working on it.
I'm working on it, and also, familiarity often breeds comfort, as it did for me growing up with Lincoln. But for example, I can say this because Betty's in the talk. The woman we spoke to, Betty, the African-American woman.
Yeah.
Betty lives in her neighborhood has become totally African. And she has a lot of problem with the Nigerians. And so we talk about what that is about. So familiarity doesn't always work. There's other things that have to be done, but you're still, in the way that you describe it, Mike, you're still coming from your head, though. Think about it for a minute.
I've been to the gym already today. I've been to the pool. I went to physical therapy for my shoulders.
Oh.
But I am in my head and my heart.
Well, right. See, now you might want to think about your heart, because that is a different way to solve a problem. That is a different way to go about a problem. And it leads to, people have said that, all over, from Martin Luther King. Change, it's a question of how does change happen and what change happens. And frankly, I don't know change that happens by people being rational and changing their minds. That's just not what you see. You don't see, that's very rare. I have one friend who's like,
you got to have economic forces.
Yeah, it's a much deeper issue than just saying, oh, well, yeah, no, I see maybe all those people aren't so bad, and so I'm going to completely change. That is really, really rare. What's usual is you grow up a certain way, you stay in that route, you don't get out of it, and and how do you get out of it? And your brain makes a lot of judgments about people, and it's supposed to. That's what it's there for. Helping us with this? No, it's not how change happens. So it's a whole question to me of how change happens. And it's one reason I'm not the usual SDSer. That's what I can say. I have gone a different route.
But you're still for people getting along, right? And in communities.
Not only am I for it, I think we will die if we don't. I think
that's my point. So I'm going to wait until your book is closer to coming out, and you're coming back on the show, and you're going to give us the pathway to peace and harmony.
It's really not. It literally just got clear to me a couple of days ago. I was working on this and working on this and working on this, and I suddenly went, oh, you know how something gets clear and it's so simple, and you go, why wasn't this clear before? But it just wasn't. And now,
can you give us a hint, a secret word that we can?
I already did.
All right, I'll watch this when we.
Sorry, but I really appreciate it. I'm just trying to be a little self-preservative, which is not something I've done well in my life. I have not done that one well. So I'm trying to just be careful that somebody doesn't say, oh, well, you already told somebody that, so we're not going to have you come. So okay. I'm just right in the middle. So please forgive me, because I love you and I appreciate being on.
No, this is good. And I've got friends in North Carolina. I'm going to try to hook you up, because you guys would like each other.
Oh, good. I love that. I've had a hard time finding community here, so that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Corrina Fales, you're one hell of an interview, and you got a great lot of experiences that you're sharing, and we're waiting for the secret pathway to peace and harmony and universal love and respect.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how much
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, I appreciate you. Thank
All
you.
right.